Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. On Tuesday night, the Bucks secured their first NBA championship in 50 years. Now, the most important thing to think about for Milwaukee is how they can defend that title, and an important step in that is the upcoming 2021 NBA offseason. There are 4 key steps for the Bucks to move through in this offseason, and in today's video, I'm going to be outlining each of those and discussing how the Bucks can potentially improve their roster to make a run at defending their title in the 2022 postseason. The first step of this upcoming offseason for the Bucks is the July 29th NBA draft. In this draft, the Bucks do not have their first-round pick because of the PJ Tucker trade or their second-round pick, but because of that Tucker trade, they swapped their first-round pick for the Rockets' second-round pick, so Milwaukee will have the 31st pick in the NBA draft from the Houston Rockets. There are 3 strong options as to what the Bucks can do with this 31st pick. The first of these options is to simply hang on to the pick and select the best player available with the 31st pick. I think the Bucks would like to emphasize bringing in a shooter on the perimeter to space the floor for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it would also be very nice if that player could defend their position at a high level on the other end of the court. I'm going to get much further into potential prospects the Bucks could draft in future videos, but the first option for the Bucks with this pick is to hang on and select the best player available. The second option for the Bucks with the 31st pick is to trade out of the draft and acquire some veteran help. In order to do this, they would have to attach that 31st pick with a contract that would either be Brook Lopez, Donte DiVincenzo, or Pat Connaughton most likely. And for each of those 3 players, along with a solid, if not spectacular, draft pick in the first pick of the second round, Milwaukee could probably acquire an upgrade, but in general, I'm not sure that this is the most likely route that the Bucks could take. A third possible option for the Bucks could be to trade back. Oklahoma City has 3 picks in the second round, and so does New Orleans. Each of those teams also has a pick between 32 and 35. So if they were potentially looking up to take someone at 31, they could give the Bucks 2 of their second-round picks in exchange for the 31st pick. A big reason why Milwaukee would like to do that is because they could then have 2 players on the rookie minimum, which is significantly less than the veteran minimum. So that would help the Bucks to stay as close to the luxury tax as possible, although going over the tax for a second consecutive season next year is nearly impossible for Milwaukee. After the draft, the second step for the Bucks is deciding on what they will do with their outgoing free agents. There are only 7 players on the Bucks roster for next season, those being Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, Donte DiVincenzo, and Pat Connaughton, and Jordan Nwora. After those 7, the Bucks don't have anyone on a guaranteed deal, but there are a few players that they certainly need to make important decisions on. These players can be separated into 2 separate groups. Group 1 is current rotation players. The first and most important guy out of this group is someone who started a whole lot of playoff games for Milwaukee this past season in PJ Tucker. Tucker is an unrestricted free agent, but the Bucks have full bird rights because they traded for Tucker from Houston, so they're able to pay him basically anything they want, despite the fact that the Bucks are already over the salary cap. I could see Tucker demanding a deal anywhere in the range of $3 million per year, all the way up to $8 million, but the Bucks should absolutely do what it takes to re-sign Tucker because he played such an important role for them in this past postseason, particularly against the Brooklyn Nets, where he was the primary defender on Kevin Durant. The second most important guy for the Bucks in this group of players is Bobby Portis, and unfortunately, I don't see a very clear route to the Bucks bringing Portis back. The Bucks do not have bird rights on Portis because he's only been on their roster for 1 season, so they can only offer him a contract of up to 120% of what he got in this past season without tapping into extension money. The contract the Bucks could offer Portis based off of his non-bird rights is a $4.3 million deal, and he actually has a player option for that amount. I expect Portis to decline that because he could get anywhere from 2 to 3 times that amount on the open market. The Bucks can offer Portis their taxpayer mid-level exception, which is equivalent to roughly $5.9 million, But as I said before, I could see Portis making anywhere up to $8 to $12 million annually on his next contract. So I think more than likely Portis is going to be moving on from the Bucks. The next guy to talk about here is Bryn Forbes. Forbes wasn't as important to the Bucks in the second, third, and fourth rounds of the playoffs, but it's easy to forget this, but Forbes was excellent for the Bucks in the first round of the playoffs against the Miami Heat. Bryn is in a very similar position to Bobby, as he is a non-bird free agent, so the Bucks can only offer him 120% of his current contract. That would take him up to $2.8 million, which is the same dollar deal that he has a player option for the upcoming season. I expect Forbes to decline that player option as well because of his strong regular season shooting numbers. He probably can get much more than that on the open market. Once again, the Bucks are able to offer Forbes their $5.9 million taxpayer mid-level exception, but I'm not sure that I value Forbes at a number quite that high, so more than likely Forbes is going to be walking as well. The next guy here is Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Thanasis is a restricted free agent, and the Bucks have early bird rights on him, so they're able to offer him a $2.1 million qualifying offer. I think that that's right around where Thanasis' value is, and the Bucks definitely should offer him this qualifying offer because he's Giannis's brother, and he provides a nice spark off the bench while also being a nice switchable defender. So I think that Thanasis will likely be back for Milwaukee next year on his qualifying offer. The last guy in this group of current rotation players that are going to be free agents for the Bucks is Jeff Teague. Teague is an unrestricted free agent who the Bucks do not have bird rights on because he was just signed at the buyout deadline last season. But I do think that it's possible that the Bucks could work out a way to bring Teague back. He was able to regain some value after sitting out most of the playoffs by being a viable option to full court pressure Chris Paul in the NBA Finals. So if the Bucks can bring Jeff Teague back on the veterans minimum, I think that that could make a lot of sense for both sides. The second group of outgoing free agents for the Bucks are their potential rotation players. These are guys that are in their first couple of years in the NBA and still have a long ways to go before they can make a true impact on a championship level team like Milwaukee. The first of these guys is Jordan Nwora. However, he is on a guaranteed deal for next year, so he certainly will be back. The next guy is Sam Merrill. Merrill's contract for next season is non-guaranteed for $1.5 million, but in his limited minutes with Milwaukee this season, he shot the ball really well from three and hung in there just well enough on the defensive end of the court to earn himself a second contract, so I definitely think that the Bucks will guarantee his deal and bring him back as a bench player for next season, potentially stepping into the role that Bryn Forbes played. The next guy is Elijah Bryant, who has the same type of deal as Merrill, where it's non-guaranteed for $1.5 million next season. Bryant was signed by the Bucks just barely before the start of the playoffs, so it seems pretty clear to me that they have intentions of keeping him on the team long term and view him as a potential rotation piece for next season, so I definitely think that they will guarantee his contract as well. The next player to talk about is Mamadi Diakite. Diakite has a team option for about $1.5 million, but the Bucks just signed him to a guaranteed contract prior to the postseason, as he was on a two-way deal for most of the year, so once again, I think Diakite probably sticks around for the Bucks on that $1.5 million team option for next year. The last two guys are Justin Jackson and Axel Toupane. These two players were on two-way contracts for Milwaukee last year, and they both have qualifying offers for about $1.5 million. If I were the Bucks, I probably wouldn't pick either of those up. Jackson shows promise as a shooter, and Toupane is a solid defensive player, but neither of those players does anything aside from that primary talent that would be intriguing enough as the Bucks to keep them around for next season. This leaves the Bucks with roughly 13 players under contract, so 2 open spots for them to sign some more players that can potentially make their rotation next season. That leads me into step 3, which is looking at incoming free agents. The Bucks have 2 ways that they can sign incoming free agents. The first of these is the taxpayer mid-level exception that I talked about them potentially offering to Bobby Portis or Bryn Forbes. That's about $5.9 million, so the Bucks could definitely bring in a solid bench player with that mid-level exception. Some guys that I would be looking at for Milwaukee would be players in the vein of Trevor Ariza or Nicholas Batum, guys that can shoot the ball from 3 and defend the wing position viably. Those type of players do a huge job in helping teams win games in the playoffs, and I definitely think that they could help boost the Bucks bench if they're able to bring in a 3-and-D wing of that caliber. The second way the Bucks can sign new players is with minimum. Oh, also I will get into who the Bucks could potentially sign with that taxpayer MLE in future videos. Anyways, the second way the Bucks can bring in new players is with minimum contracts. This probably just gets them end of the bench guys who can maybe crack the rotation. Think of players at a similar level to what Jeff Teague played at for Milwaukee last season. You're probably not getting too much out of those players on the minimum, so obviously the Bucks hitting on their taxpayer mid-level exception is the most important thing for them when it comes to incoming free agents next season. Step 4 for the Bucks in their upcoming offseason is looking at potential trades. I think it's highly unlikely that the Bucks pull the trigger on any sort of substantial trade, as they just won the championship and really like their core moving forward. So for me, the biggest things for the Bucks this offseason are drafting at 31, whether that means taking someone with the 31st pick or trading down. They also have to make good decisions on their outgoing free agents and bring back the correct players, and then bring in some solid guys in the incoming free agent class. Overall, Jon Horst had a fantastic season last year as the Bucks GM, as he absolutely nailed his free agency signings in Bobby Portis and Bryn Forbes, while also making spectacular trades for PJ Tucker and obviously Drew Holiday. So I have a lot of faith in Horst making the right decisions this offseason for Milwaukee, and I'm excited to see what type of additions they're able to make. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video, especially if you're a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. There's going to be lots more content coming out this offseason previewing who the Bucks could potentially draft with the 31st pick and who they could sign in free agency as well. Also, let me know in the comment section down below who you think the biggest priorities for the Bucks should be in this upcoming offseason. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.